Hello, I'd like to welcome you to Rett University, rettu.org, and introduce you to our courses on emergent literacy. Our course on emergent literacy for girls with Rett Syndrome is going to be a three-part series, and I'm going to go through what you're going to learn in all of them and then what you're going to learn in each of the parts. It is titled Emergent Literacy for Girls with Rett Syndrome. It should also say girls, women, adults, teenagers, because we're going to cover all of the ages. And it's based on the 6-block model as conceptualized by Patricia Cunningham and Dorothy Hall. And I am Susan Norwell. I'm a Rett Educational Specialist and co-founder of Rett University. So I'm happy to meet you, at least virtually. Let me talk to you about what you can expect and a brief overview of this course. First of all, we're going to take a look at some basic assumptions about Rett syndrome. And I preface all my courses with this piece because I think that it is often where people get bogged down in school systems when they're working with the girls, or parents get bogged down when they're working with the girls and women, is what are some of the basic assumptions that are accurate about the girls? If you know me, you know I'm a firm believer in the fact that Rett syndrome is more of a motor disability and an access disability than a cognitive disability. And I think that's where the mismatch happens often for the girls when they're involved in the learning process. People are assuming cognitive incompetence instead of presuming competence. The girls shut down, and what people are seeing is not a lack of ability, but a lack of, really? If you really think I'm that low, I don't even know how to relate to you. And so we really need to take a look at the apraxia honestly, look at how it affects the girls, but also look at the ways that we can work around it, because it's when we understand the apraxia and understand some strategies for circumventing it that we can really see the girls' true abilities. We're going to take a look at a change in instructional perspective, a paradigm shift that has to take place if we're going to be effective with individuals with Rett syndrome. So we have to look at this behavioral bent that has kind of come into our schools, largely due to the fact that it's measurable and schools are all about assessment. But the problem with the behavioral approach to things is it's very much, I tell you you do, I tell you you do. That does not work for our girls at all. And so we need to kind of sit back and say, okay, what kind of a paradigm shift, what kind of a perspective, what is the skill set that teachers need to develop and parents need to develop in order to be most effective in educating individuals with Rett syndrome? We're going to take a look at play, and play for all ages. And play certainly takes on very different meanings depending on how old you are. But we're all playful, and the language around play builds a wonderful foundation for vocabulary and a wonderful foundation for interaction. And play for a young child is pretty familiar to all of us. We can play baby, we can play, grocery store, we can play lots of things. How to adapt that and have it make it work for kids that aren't using their hands is a little trickier, but certainly doable. And the language that goes along with it, how do we build that? But we have older girls, and we need to maybe be talking about fashion and how they're going to dress up and what it would be like if they went to the movies, and kind of pretend playing out scenarios that help them use their language also. We're going to take a look at emergent literacy and its definition. What is emergent literacy? What sets it apart from conventional reading, which we're all much more familiar with? Where does it fall in this continuum of birth to conventional reading? Where does it fit in there? And then what is the research? What is the research telling us about the importance of emergent literacy and the skill sets that are a part of emergent literacy and how they affect an individual's ability to learn to read later on? We're then going to jump into the building block model as conceptualized by Cunningham and Hall. And in part one, we're going to do all of what I just talked about plus block one. And block one is really about learning that reading is fun, engaging, that we can learn from reading, and that writing is something that we want to be a part of. So this whole immersion in books and being able to see that that is something that is attainable and fun and something that the girls want to be engaged in. And that's where their paradigm shift really becomes essential, so that book reading doesn't become a test and it doesn't become a one-way street. It has to be this dialogic back and forth process. In part 2, we're going to take a look at blocks 2, 3, and 4. 2 being building a vocabulary, which is essential for all-around communication, but essential for literacy skills. We're going to look at print concepts, which is that ability to understand tracking and position of text on the page and how we really operate within a book. And then block 4, which is all about phonemic awareness, building concepts of rhyme, building that ear print for sounds, being able to play with sounds, which again is very challenging for kids that can't use their mouth to communicate, can't play with the sounds in their mouth. Lots and lots of strategies for how we can get those sounds in to develop that all essential important area of phonemic awareness, because it will support later decoding and encoding. Then in part 3, we're going to take a look at blocks 5 and 6. And blocks 5 and 6 are about some of the probably more traditional things that we can relate to, is learning letters and learning letter sounds and learning some important words, an environmental text that has to do with things that are within a kiddo's environment. And also that very beginning of shared reading, looking at how we are teaching them to do some very beginning reading around books that they really like. In that third part, we're also going to look at assessment for girls with Rett syndrome. What would assessment on all these blocks look like? And after each block, there's a summary statement about what we've learned, and there's also a set of goals, because I am not opposed to IEPs. I'm just opposed to measuring junk. So we want to make sure we're measuring good things. But if we're going to measure good things, then we have to be really good about how we're going to assess what the girls have learned in a way, again, looking at another paradigm shift, how are we going to make this assessment palatable so it doesn't increase the apraxia to the point where we're not getting any reliable data. The last piece we're going to look at is we're going to look at classroom scheduling, because classroom scheduling is essential if we're going to fit all these blocks in. And oftentimes I go into schools and they're like, oh my gosh, you know, we have a really packed day. How am I going to fit this in? And I'm an outside the box thinker. Any of you who know me, that's probably my strong suit. I'm a jerry rigger from way back. But I'm usually able to look at schedules and go, okay, this is where it could work. And so in this part of the webinar, in part 3, it'll be great if people post or send in school schedules if they're struggling with how to fit it all in, and we can make it be set up even a go-to-meeting or a go-to-webinar about that, where we'll set up a night where we can all get together and we can just talk that through as part of the course. Of course, communication and interaction are going to be embedded throughout, because if we don't hold that communication piece, which is so essential for our girls who are typically nonverbal, and that interaction piece they're not going to learn. And so my end goal here is that all girls, all individuals with Rett, I have to say boys, because I'm actually going to be meeting my second boy, I'm so excited, all individuals with Rett learn to read and write, because if they can read and write, they can be fully communicative. And so the reason I think emergent literacy is so essential, no matter the age that you're learning it at, we have little bitties that are going to be on that emergent literacy timeline, on that trajectory. But we also have older girls and women who have never been exposed to literacy that are going to be emergent. And so we're also going to be looking at, and threaded throughout this, is all the different age spans, so we make sure that we hit how you would do emergent literacy with all of them. So again, I just want to welcome you to Rett University and welcome you to Emergent Literacy for girls with Rett syndrome. And we're going to be having a 3-part series on emergent literacy. So I hope to see you soon in the halls of Rett U.